Hello and welcome to Property Investment Blueprint Podcast. In today's podcast, I am here with Samuel Inkingwin. A few years ago, Samuel was a teacher working over 60 hours a week. Samuel defies all odds and started his property investment journey from little of his own money to building a massive property sourcing company. Samuel has his own property investment training company. He's got his podcast as well as his YouTube channel. Samuel has been featured in various shows and magazines like Property Investor Show, Property Investor Network, Your Property Network, Landlord Investment, the list goes on. I love your tenacity, Samuel, your energy and your mission you've embarked on really. It's absolutely blew me away when I was recommended by one of my podcasters who said, listen, you need to interview Samuel. Samuel's got the energy, he's got the power, he's enthusiastic, and he's literally helping so many people out there. So, bro, I am honored to be your host on the Property Investment Blueprint, and welcome, Samuel, for spending some time with us today.
Thank you, Rahim. Thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be able to add value to your community as well.
You're welcome. This story isn't good unless people know where you came from and how you started your property investment journey. Tell our audience how you started and scale your property business into a massive property investment portfolio.
Awesome. Thank you for that amazing question to start us off. The reality, Rahim, is, there's an old African adage. They say it takes a village to raise a child. And if I'm going to be totally honest, I believe that I've had lots of village interactions in order to get to where I am today. I don't believe that anyone is self-made. I believe it takes a mama and a papa to make someone happen. And I believe that that's the same with life, especially with true success. So, my property journey, I tell people, usually really started when I was 11 years old. When I was 11, I was at home. I'm one of 4 boys. And my mum came home one day. She used to work for a central bank in London. And after 15 years, she came home one day and she just said, "Oh, I've been made redundant." Now, you've got to think about this from my perspective. I'm 11 years old. My mum's worked in this bank for longer than I've been alive. And one day she comes home and says, someone just wrote her name on a piece of paper and decided that she was the one who had to go that day. And that touched me. It touched me for a number of reasons. It touched me first and foremost because I was 11. Like, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't work. I couldn't generate an income. I couldn't save or rescue my mum. So there was nothing I could do. And it's interesting because my mum had told me, go to school, get a good job, get paid, and you'll be able to buy a house. So that whole methodology of go to school, get a good job, etc., was kind of crashed and broken at the age of 11, seeing my mum being made redundant. Now, the interesting thing is my dad, for example, he always had his own business when I was growing up. And I used to look at my dad and always think to myself, he didn't look very rich, and the funniest thing, I've now matured a lot more and realized that riches aren't what people wear, riches aren't what people drive. But at that time, as again, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, I didn't really understand that money is not what you look like. Money is actually what you have. So as a result, I started to decide that, I was going to choose some other paths. Fast forward many years in the future, I went on, studied 3-4 degrees, as you mentioned, became a secondary and A-level maths teacher. And then I even progressed to becoming a teacher trainer, teaching teachers how to teach. And as I went through all of that, I just kept realizing to myself the same thing I realized as an 11-year-old. I can't rescue myself the same way I couldn't rescue my mum. So I said to myself, how are things going to change? If my mum had a normal job, the kind of job she told me to get, and it didn't work because one day someone made a decision that basically affected her whole financial life. If my dad had his own business and equally it never looked like it was real success, my question was, what was the actual path for me? And, some of your listeners, some of your viewers may know that, there's an adage, it says success leaves clues. So what I started to do is I started to search for those clues. From as early as 11, I was actually searching for those clues, but I started to find those clues as I was going along. And I started to realize what those clues were. Those clues were, you need to be able to follow a success blueprint, which is one of the powerful things about your podcast actually being called Property Investment Blueprint, because you're actually assisting people to get the blueprint in order to move further faster. So what I started to do is I started to realize if I didn't have much money, one of the best routes for me to get into property was actually to look at an alternative method than just buying. And that was property sourcing at the time, adding value to other people. And I'm very big on adding value. It's something that's always been at my heart, which is why I became a teacher. So my thought process was, well, if I could learn how to find great deals and provide those great deals for the people who do have the money, I will be remunerated. Because I remember being young, at 18 years old, and hearing Zig Ziglar saying, that service to many leads to greatness. So I spent my whole life effectively serving other people in order to build my own greatness. And through means of doing that, yes, we did start to generate a lot of revenue, which we were then later able to use to buy property, control property, and build up our own portfolio, which we now teach other people to do and have been doing for a number of years.
Well done, bro. Congratulations. You've done
you.
really, really well from that journey. I can really see how you've got that why, because probably I think your mom, I believe your mom was your why. Your mom who that lost her job was what triggers you to say, probably maybe I don't want to go down the route of what my mom went through. You try to do it in a different way by maybe teaching people and all that sort of thing, but you're able to come out and thinking, oh, probably I may be in the similar position as my mom maybe 20 or 25 years ago, and then you then think outside the box, and obviously then you went to property investment, so which is a really, really good thing, basically, because when you're thinking about it, people are just thinking about what we've been taught at university or at college or at school is basically go to school, continue college, university, get a degree, go and work for someone, and then hopefully you get yourself a better pension, which is one of the worst advices someone would ever have when it comes to property or when it comes to success, actually. But I'm really, really delighted you were lucky enough to have that epiphany moment at that age. Well done for that. But then you're talking about sourcing here. Then, what advice would you have for anybody who's thinking or is about to start their sourcing company? And do not really sure whether it is the right thing to do or whether he wants to go do another strategy or things like that. What would be the best advice for you to give to someone who wants to start their journey that way?
Well, that's a powerful question. I think for me, what I'll do, Rahim, because I think this will be really helpful for the listeners and the viewers, is I'll share with you a concept that I teach a lot of my coaching clients to help them understand how they can choose the fastest path to their success. And basically, I teach them about what I call the 3 sights. And it's very simple. I actually learned this from the Bible. This is not something I made up. So this has been going way before I was born, and it's going to be going way before or way after I'm here. But the 3 sights are these. The first one is hindsight. Okay, for every single person, they should be able to look back in their life, whether they're 1 year old, they've got a 1 year track record, whether they're 35-year-old, they've got a 35-year track record, whether they're 55, 65, they've got a 55 or 65-year track record to look back on. So the first sight we all need to use is called hindsight. And that's when we look back and we ask ourselves over the years, like for me, at 11, I saw what happened to my mom. You know, in my 20s, I saw myself studying degree after degree after degree after degree. I studied 4 degrees. And what I realized again and again from my hindsight was this stuff doesn't work. And when you realize that stuff doesn't work, unless you want to continue down a path that doesn't work, you have to change the path. So hindsight is one of the greatest things that can be used for that. So if someone reached out to me today and said, look, Samuel, I'm trying to replace my income, or Samuel, I'm trying to sack my spouse's boss, which is kind of the things I specialize in, or Samuel, you know what, I want to start a property sourcing business, or Samuel, you know what, I just need more cash flow. My thing to them always will be, well, look back over your life and ask yourself, what are the key lessons you've learned? So one of the key lessons I learned was success is always best served in your own hands. Okay, and that's just a soundbite, but if you're taking notes, you need to write that down. Success is always best served in your own hands. What does that mean? What that means is, if you are, like you mentioned a moment ago, Rahim, you know, respecting the government to provide a pension for you in your latter years, where your knees may not be as strong as they were when you were 20 or 30, you are allowing your final level of success financially to be in the hands of someone else. And for me, I personally believe that success is best served when it's in your own hands. You get the power to decide. So because of that, when we look back through means of hindsight, we can determine and say to ourselves, okay, this is what I've learned. What I learned at 11, watching my mom being made redundant, is I should take success into my own hands. That's the first thing. So after hindsight, the next thing you need is insight. Now, the insight questions I had to ask myself when I was starting my property journey is, Samuel, what do you have? What are my resources? Okay. Now, the problem for most people is they ask themselves about their resources and get stuck at that level. Now, one of the things I'm a strong believer of is your resources do not determine what you can become. Okay. But your resources are helpful for you to understand the floor you're standing on in order for you to elevate or propel yourself up. So when I first asked myself, I said, well, Samuel, what do you have? Well, I have experience in property because at the age of 19, my first full-time job was as an estate agent. I also recognized that I had a tenacity for property. Why? Because I personally felt that I was supposed to be in the property industry. It wasn't just a feeling. I felt it was a calling. I felt it was my actual purpose to be in property, to generate revenue through means of property, and also build a legacy for my children and my children's children, which my parents weren't able to leave me a hefty inheritance. So the question was, how could I leave a hefty inheritance? And I remember being younger, looking at things like the Times 100 list that we have in the UK or the Forbes 400 list that they have in the US, and seeing that an overwhelming majority of the people on the top of that list either made or retained their wealth using property. So again, going back to what I said earlier, success leaves clues. These were the clues that were laid out, which I could choose to follow or I could choose to neglect. And I chose that I wouldn't neglect them. So the second thing we need is insight. We need to ask ourselves, when we've looked back and determined kind of what we've learned from the past, what do we see about where we are now? So I understood I had insight. I understood from my insight that I had knowledge around property. I had a good understanding about property. And I understood that property was for me. So the moment I understood that through my insight, the next thing we need to activate is the third sight, which is foresight. Now, foresight is our ability to look ahead of where we are and understand, or if we're very advanced, create a path from where we are to where we're going. So this is exactly what I did. I said to myself, well, hold on a minute. What strategy should I do in property? And this is one of the interesting things, Rahim. You get all of these people in property, these gurus, these teachers who tell you, go and do rent to rent, or who tell you, go and do lease options, or go and do property sourcing, etc., etc. I don't teach that. And the reason I don't teach that, it's not to say those people are doing the wrong thing, but I don't teach that because, again, I believe success leaves clues. So let me give you a very simple analogy. You see, let's talk about the trades, because I dealt with a tradesman this morning. So I'll give you an example. So with plumbers, for example, you get some plumbers who come into a house and the only thing they can fix or only thing they want to fix is a sink and a leaky tap. And that's great because they can fix a sink and a leaky tap. But if you have a problem with your boiler, if you have a problem with your bath, if you have a problem with your toilet stack, you should be able to ask the same plumber, hey, Mr. Plumber, can you help me with the toilet stack? There's also an issue there. Can you help me with the bath? There's also an issue there. And if we're talking about things like generating wealth or cash flow creation or leaving an inheritance, what we should understand is the skill set that we have, which we mix with our mindset and our tool set, but that's a lesson for another day. But the skill set that we have determines our ability to create wealth, create cash flow, etc., etc. Yeah. So what I started to realize is when I went on property courses a number of years ago, like a decade ago, people were telling me, do this one strategy. And I realized that learning the one strategy is great, but the problem is I was losing many opportunities. So I asked myself, okay, Samuel, if you're going to go fully into this property thing, you're going to take this seriously, you're going to leave your job, your secured revenue, as many people see it, in order to follow and pursue your passion in property, what strategy are you going to focus on? And what I realized is I didn't want to focus on a rent-to-rent strategy or a lease option strategy or a HMO strategy or a buy, refurbish, refinance strategy. I didn't want to focus on any of those strategies. What I wanted to focus on was a strategy that allowed me to learn all of the strategies. And that's the reason I followed the property sourcing path, because everything starts with property sourcing. You cannot do a buy, refurbish, refinance if you can't find a property to buy, refurbish, refinance. You cannot do a rent-to-rent deal if you can't find a property that you can use for rent-to-rent. You can't do a lease option, you can't do a buy-to-let, you can't do anything unless you find the deal first. So the art of finding great deals is how I define property sourcing, and that's why I started property sourcing. And then straight after going into property sourcing, because of the foresight I had, I then had people asking me, maybe because of my teaching background, but I had a lot of people asking me, Samuel, can you teach me how to do this? And this was this happened a lot when I used to host a networking event, one of the largest networking events in the UK. And this networking event would have over 100 people attending every single month. And people just kept asking me, Samuel, how do I do what you've done? And the first thing I kept realizing is so many of these people wanted to do what I had done, but didn't understand the way I had done it. So what I did is I created this program called 30 Ways in 30 Days. And the interesting thing about this program is what the program teaches. I'll read the subtitle. It says multiple ways to generate revenue using property. And what I basically teach in that program is don't become a one-trick pony. Don't be focused and fixed on just one strategy. Be someone who's mastering your primary strategy, but who's also aware of and learning other strategies, because that will allow you now to sell deals to other people. That will allow you now to be able to transition when you want to transition out of rent to rent into the purchasing and acquisition of properties. That will allow you to be able to pivot from HMOs into short lease strategies, and so on and so on.
Yeah, brilliant. That is impactful. That is really, really lots of golden nuggets in that answer, bro. I appreciate you for that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Basically, in my coaching business, also what I do, basically, I've asked them, listen, there's so many strategies out there. You can't do all of them in one go. Master one. With that mastery, you can then use that same mastery to get any other deals within that sort of property investment strategies that you're doing. So what we do is, okay, based on their situation, because what we do, we understand where they are first before we determine what they could prioritize. I was okay, now in this case, maybe you want to get into XYZ. Let's prioritize sourcing, as you just said, because if you do sourcing, you are exposed to all the strategies, right? Then you can pick and choose what you want to do. But if you master that one strategy, that would allow you to actually move into other different strategies. What I've told them, okay, master this strategy, invest 80% of your time in this one strategy, because that is your baby. And then obviously look for any other strategies that can bring you additional income. So that is very, very impactful. I like that answer. It's absolutely amazing. So then I know you've got your property training business, you've got your podcast, you have your YouTube, and then obviously you have your deal sourcing company. How do you able to scale your business to that next level? Because obviously it's got lots of parts and gestures around it.
See, this is powerful, Rahim, man. Obviously, we didn't talk about this prior to the interview, but it's interesting because another resource I created, which is the answer, it's the simplest way for me to answer you in the most succinct fashion, is this program called Team 10. Now, I'll read the subtitle for you to understand what this program's about. It's called Discover Your Property Power Team. And, you know, one of the big things I believe, and I started off the interview by sharing this, is that it takes a village to raise a person. It takes a community in order for people to have true, long-lasting success. So because I strongly believe that, you know, a number of years ago, I created that program to teach people the 10 key players they need in order to have a successful property power team. You see, you're not going to build any significant level of success on your own, okay? And I learned that, I didn't make that up. I learned that from John C. Maxwell, who's a foremost leadership coach in the UK or in the world, on the planet, as it were. And that's one of the things that John C. Maxwell used to teach. And I remember being 18, 19, getting exposed to his material and reading one of his books and seeing that, I believe he calls it the law of one, and that one is not a significant enough number to create anything impactful. And as a result, you know, we have to be people who understand, you know what, on my own, I can do some great stuff, but with other people, I can do infinitely greater stuff. And the heart of the answer to your question is through means of teams. You know, most people who know me know I'm a committed and devoted married man. Not only that, not only am I a husband, I'm also a father. You know, I've got children. And for me, I'm not trying to build something for me. I'm trying to build something for a community of people. And part of that community is my family. So because of that, I'm always thinking about other people we can work with, other people we can collaborate with, how we can successfully develop and build things that are going to far exceed my lifetime. You know, and this is part of the reason why I work very closely with my wife in order to add value to communities through means of some of the training that we deliver and all of the other stuff we do as well, because we are very focused on helping people elevate, but we know that the keys to elevation are very contrary to the keys we're given in school. Now, how do I know that? Well, I used to teach in schools. I used to be a teacher trainer, so I've trained a lot of teachers in the UK, and then side by side with that, I've gone through the formal education system to a very high level in terms of studying 4 degrees. And one of the things I understand is the whole education system invests in one thing, and it's called cleverness. It wants you to become more and more clever. Why? Because every time you elevate in the educational system traditionally, you're writing more and more words in your dissertations and in your theses. But what we have to understand is real success doesn't come from cleverness, okay? Real success comes from clarity, which is about being clear, not being clever. So one of the things I spend a lot of my time doing in my property business and with the people I coach and support is helping them get clear. And this is why I shared with you guys earlier about the hindsight, the insight, and the foresight, because the better you get at using those 3 sights, the better you get at being clear. And the clearer you see, as Jim Rohn used to say, the bolder steps you can take. So absolutely. I would say to you, Rahim, you know, the real key for any single person who's saying to themselves, you know what, I want to elevate my property business, I want to become more successful, I want to have, you know, my finger in multiple things, is not to rush, but to get really clear, because the clearer you get, the bolder steps you'll take.
Yes, thanks very much for that. I remember an interview I watched. Someone was interviewing Bill Gates. They've asked him, Bill Gates, you haven't been to uni, you've been to university, but you haven't actually completed your degree, and now you've got this business, this Microsoft company, how were you able to actually get that business to the next level? He said he wasn't smart enough to finish his degree, but he was clever enough to employ people that were smarter than him to take his business to the next level. So exactly what you're just saying, they said about teamwork. So if you've got a vision, right? As he said, you can't do everything at the same time. Get people who are clever than you. Like I had a meeting this morning because I'm working in a massive project right now to do with helping people go on holiday without paying for their accommodation. So we were about to launch, but we were in a sticky position, right? And I was meant to make the decision. What I did basically, I called my marketing manager, I called my web developer, project manager, and I called the actual person who's doing the thing itself. So we sat together. Within 10-15 minutes, we came up with an amazing idea. So I don't know anything to do with IT. I don't know a lot about marketing. But when I put those heads together, I sat back and listened to each and everybody. Right? When they gave all their opinions on their options, then we decided to go with the best option. So again, it's all about bringing people together. Once you've got those people together, you can then lead because you've got the vision. You know where you want to take your business. Getting those smart people along the way can only elevate your process. You're absolutely right on that one, and I really appreciate you sharing that.
Let me say this, Rahim, before you go to the next question, if I can.
Go for it.
You know, it's so pertinent that you just shared what you just shared. It's so powerful. And part of the reason why is because what you've just described of getting that team together is you are creating a foundation for clarity. You know, and this is one of the reasons I'm so grateful I paid over £20,000 and invested in my property investment journey over the years in the past, because of the simple fact that all I was doing was gaining more clarity. I was putting smarter people around me, people that were clever in their own way, but it wasn't about my cleverness or their cleverness. It was about the clarity that could come from the collaboration. So it's really powerful hearing you say that, because when you get around the IT guy, the marketing guy, and you put them all together, what happens is the picture becomes clearer for all of you, and thus you can elevate much faster. So it's powerful you sharing that example. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So what advice do you have for Black and ethnic minority that think property investing is for white dominated people? So what sort of advice do you have for those sort of people? Because I've been met so many times when I start telling people about property, oh man, this is white people's thing, or this is rich people's thing. This is not for me. And I've been to so many property events. I never see people like myself there. So what advice do you really have for those people?
All right, that's interesting. I've got two pieces of advice. I had one, but then you added that last part, so it gave me another one. So I'll speak to the last one first. For the people who are out there who say, you know what, they don't see people looking like them doing property. You know, I'm a big reader of the Bible. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 7, it says, seek and ye shall find. It says a few more things. It says, ask and it shall be given unto you. Knock and the door will be open. But specifically the seek and ye shall find, I will say to those people, like, if you're not looking for people that look like you in a specific arena, you cannot find them. Why? Because you're not looking. You know, and the objective of looking is to have your eyes open. So you need to seek in order to find. You know, there are many people who may see things right in front of them, but never recognize those things because they're not looking for them. So the first thing I would say, seek in order for you to find. For those people who say, you know, they never see people who look like them, who are active in property, and that maybe property is for another industry of people. Now, for the main question that you asked in terms of what advice I have for people, you know, again, found in the Bible, you know, the Bible says something very powerful. It says, wide is the path that leads to destruction. And it says, many are those that are on that path, but narrow is the road that leads to life. And there's few people on that path. And what I would say in terms of, you know, that part of the Bible and what my thoughts are around that is, for most human beings, what we do is we follow wide paths. And the reason we follow wide paths, I did a video about this on YouTube a couple of years ago, talking about herd mentality. I believe I was invited to speak at the National Landlord Investment Show that particular day. And on my journey to the National Landlord Investment Show to present, I spoke about a train station I went into. I recorded it, you know, hundreds of people in the train station, hundreds of people all trying to fit through 4 or 5 barriers. All right. And it was an interesting sight. But the reason why it was so powerful to share that morning of that particular interview is because I was going to be talking about herd mentality, and how herd mentality scientifically is when we do things because everyone else is doing those things. Now, many people work JOBs, which people call jump out of bread, get on the journey of the broke so you can stay just over broke. Many people follow the job route because many other people do it, because our parents tell us to do it, because our school teachers tell us to do it, because our school teachers are doing it, rather than actually saying to myself, hold on a minute, is this the wide road to destruction? And I'll give you an example, okay? I saw something the other day talking about some of these government ministers who are going to be giving pensioners an extra bit of money because of the recent increase in utilities. And I sat there and I thought to myself, if only those older people took their financial success into their own hand 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, they wouldn't be allowing their success to be determined by a complete stranger who may or may not give them that extra money. It's up to them. And again, going back to the experience I had as an 11-year-old, I was taught very clearly by my mum's scenario that if I'm going to wait for someone else to choose success for me, they may not choose whatever I deem a success for me. And it's because of this that I say to people all the time exactly what I've shared from the Bible. If you walk down a wide path, which many people are walking down, don't be surprised if the end of that path is destructive. But if you walk down a narrow path, which maybe not many people are walking down, don't be surprised if the end of that path is success, life, abundance, and everything else you're looking for. Because the reality is most people, unfortunately, most people, and I say it again, most people are not happy with the decisions they've made in their life because they haven't taken enough time to have hindsight, to take insight and inventory of what they can see, and also to then have foresight.
Absolutely, bro. You nailed that question. You nailed it, basically. I really, really get what you're saying there, where you said, following the mass. So what I tell my student or the people I work with or the people I mentor is that, like, observe the mass and do the opposite, right? They said, oh, Rahim, property prices are going in this place, going up in that area. I said, if you know that already, you have missed the boat, right? So if the wave has gone to that place, it's on the news, everybody knew it. That means it had already happened. Right? So do not follow what everyone is doing. Look for your path, as you've just said, and go towards that path. What I tell my student, observe what everyone is doing. You do exactly the opposite. I do that for my service accommodation property. When everybody's fighting in the city center, I'm moving away from the city center. I'm moving in a place near city center where there's not lots of competition, and I get more return on my investment. I get more return on my in my cash flow, and I also get higher demand in those areas because obviously there's no competition there, and I am the only one going to that path. And I always don't tell them that it's too crowded at the bottom, right? There's so many people there, so you want to move away where there is a lots of people, so you can get yourself to think, get yourself to progress, and get yourself to the next level. You absolutely nailed that question, bro. I love that answer. Okay, what does deal sourcer know, as you are a deal sourcer, and buy-to-let investors do not know?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, like I don't spend a lot of my time finding deals as much as I used to when we started our property sourcing business. Now I spend a lot more of my time creating cash flow in terms of our portfolio through means of taking on specific assets. But it's a great question. Like, so what does a deal sourcer know that a buy-to-let investor does not know? Well, the simplest thing that they don't know is how to create colossal cash flow. And this is something that we teach a lot of our students. So, creating colossal cash flow is a key to success in property. Why? Because what most people don't realize is property investment is a business. It's a form of business. So the moment you understand that property investment is a form of business, what you will quickly find is that the people who are doing the best in property investment are the people who are very good at business. So, for example, business has certain metrics that make it work, such as supply and demand, okay? Now, if you understand how the metrics of supply and demand work, which are basic concepts, you can take advantage of your property business and be producing results 10 times better than anyone else. So I'll give you an example. We just recently recorded a video campaign, which is going to be launched soon, where I talk about a particular street of property, and I literally tell you how much each person on that road is creating from each property, and then I speak to you about the property we have on that road. And the property we have on that road is producing £1,100 more than any other property on that road. Okay, why is that? Well, the reason that is because the rest of the road is owned by buy-to-let investors, and buy-to-let investors, one of the things they don't know, that property investors, that what I call, cash flow creators, or that property sourcing agents who know what they're doing, because there's a lot of property sourcing agents who have no clue about what they're doing. But one thing that people who do know what they're doing know I'll call them cash flow creators know way more than buy-to-let investors, is that this is a business. This is not a side hustle. You know, if you go and look at the statistics, what you'll find is the large majority of people who own buy-to-let property are what we call accidental landlords. And then secondarily, outside of the accidental landlords, they are hobbyists. There are people who bought a property because they were told you can't go wrong with property. Well, the reality is you can go wrong with property, and there's hundreds of thousands of people you can ask about that in the US, in the UK, through means of 2008, 2009 and the crash. So if we have a landslide of people who suffer in 2008, 2009, and most of those people were doing the traditional buy-to-let thing, then the reality is there's probably a lot that a buy-to-let investor doesn't know that someone who finds deals knows, and equally someone who knows how to create cash flow knows. So let me give you a few of those things just so that if we have any buy-to-let traditional investors listening, they can understand. The first thing is leverage, okay? Now, most people think leverage means, okay, I put 25% deposit down, and because I put 25% deposit down, a bank gives me 75%, and I leverage a bank. But what you don't realize is that you can also leverage in order to acquire that 25% deposit, so you are not raising that money yourself. Now, how do you do that? Well, there's multiple ways. One of the ways is through means of creative negotiation. If you can negotiate effectively, which is a skill you may need to learn, but if you can negotiate effectively, you could be able to radically reduce your initial input. Secondarily, is through means of using other people's money, or OPM as we call it. Now, if you learn to use other people's money, you can end up not having to raise that deposit funds yourself, and now you're tapping into your resourcefulness and not just your own resources. And that allows you to have an infinitely scalable property business, because now it's not determined on how much you've got in your bank account. It's actually determined on how many people are interested in investing with you and how much revenue they can bring to the table. So take, for example, one of my students, I believe he sent us like a LinkedIn testimonial some time ago, speaking about how in 2 months he was able to get his first cash flowing property generating £1,450 per month. Okay, and that's way more than a lot of buy-to-let investors I know generate from 5 properties, let alone 1. But then side by side with him generating that revenue, he was able to sell 2 deals, one for £3,000, one for £2,500. He was also able to raise £20,000 in investor finance, and he has an additional £55,000 in reserve for whenever he needs it. Now, someone who produced those level of results, most people say, yeah, that's going to take 6 months. That's going to take 6 years to do. Go check me out on LinkedIn, see the testimonial, my recommendations. The gentleman explained that it took him 2 months to do that because of the stuff that we taught him. Okay, so how do you raise £20,000 of other people's money, get £55,000 in reserve? How do you end up selling 2 deals, one for £3,000, one for £2,500, and take on your first property, generating a cash flow of £1,450 a month? Well, you do all of that by knowing stuff that traditional buy-to-let investors don't know. It's not a hobby, okay? And one of the keys you need to do is leverage. And one of the key people most people need to leverage, which they don't realize they need to leverage, is leveraging not just other people's money, but other people's knowledge, other people's skill. And this is the reason why I decided to invest in coaches very long time ago, because I knew in my normal job, if they want you to become better at something, they go and pay for you to do what they call CPD, continual professional development. So why in your actual business, which is going to generate you way more revenue, help you become way more successful, and allow you to live a way better life, would you not take continued professional development, which I know as coaching, development, and training? So, you know, that's what I'd say to the traditional buy-to-let investor. Why don't you actually treat your property business the same way your employer treats your job, and get serious about learning how to elevate in a very short period of time?
I love that, bro. I love that. I love your answers. You know, I love that. So I'm just gonna draw you back a little bit here. You talked about hard times. I'm definitely inspired by someone who overcame hard time. Do you mind sharing a time or event that was really, really hard time for you and how you overcame it?
Awesome. That's a great question. For me, like the hardest time that ever comes to mind is 2015, if I'm just going to be very honest with you. And it's not because it was the hardest, it's probably because it was the closest, so thus it's the most memorable. You see, 2015, I'd just been married for 3 years. When I got married to my beautiful wife, I said to her some simple things. One of the simple things was, you don't have to go to work if you don't want to. Okay. I guess I was raised as a kind of like traditionalist, and I just felt like as a man, it was my job to bring in the bacon, as they call it, to generate the revenue. And I remember saying that to her in 2012 when we got married. Listen, Queen, if you don't want to go to work, you don't have to. And the interesting thing was 3 years later, fast forward, we had our first 2 children. We had my oldest daughter, beautiful, she's 8 now. And we had my oldest son, handsome young man, he's 7 now.
Well done.
And here's the interesting thing. In 2015, just 3 years, small amount of time, just 3 years after we got married, I realized something. I realized that I was failing on my promises. I realized that, you know, some of the goals my wife and I wrote down when we were planning to get married was we wanted to homeschool our children. And what we very quickly realized is you can't homeschool your children if you are on a 9-to-5 salary. And if my wife was equally on a 9-to-5 salary. So 2015 hurt because in 2015 it hit that I was dealing in a scenario where I wasn't the hero I thought I was going to be for my wife. You know, I made her these promises in 2012, and 3 years later, we had 2 children. And for those of you who have never had children, let me explain to you what happens when you have children. With 2 words, everything changes. You know, you stop thinking about revenue, you stop thinking about wealth creation, and you start thinking about nappies, nappy bags, nappy sacks, and do you have wipes when you're going out? Okay,
I relate to that because I got two children as well.
So you understand. And here's the interesting thing, Rahim, for us in 2015, having these 2 young children, these 2 beautiful children who I was looking at and saying, you know what, I want to provide the whole world for them. Looking at my wife, thinking to myself, I've already made you promises and I want to be able to come true on those promises. I literally realized I did the maths. Like, this is what most people need to do for their life. They need to do the maths. Why? Because maths is not something that's learned. Maths is something that's discovered. Okay. And this is why I used to love teaching maths in schools, because most of the subjects you learn in schools were created out of someone's head. Maths was not created. All maths is discovered. And the great thing about that, even though most people say, oh, they're not good at maths, the reality is you're probably really good at maths. You just had a really bad teacher. But the reality about maths is it's all discovered. So I did the maths. I started asking myself, well, if I keep doing what I'm doing on this £47,000 salary a year, with my wife on this £29,000 salary a year, what is going to become of us? Like, just do the maths, and everyone can do the maths. People listening to us right now can pause this, you can take a moment, take a pen and paper and just do the maths. If you keep doing what you're doing right now, what is going to become of you in 5 years, in 10 days, in 10 years, in 20 years? And when you do the maths, what you realize, well, what I realized, let me talk about myself. In 2015, what I very quickly realized is my children would not be happy if I just kept doing what I was doing. My wife would not receive the heart of the promises I gave her in 2012 if I just kept doing what I was doing. And it made me realize something. Samuel, you've got to change from what you are doing. And this was part of the reason why we started really getting serious about finding deals for other people and getting paid for those deals, but side by side with that, starting to build our own property management business, and then further from that, obviously acquiring our own properties as well.
Brilliant, bro. Fantastic. Thanks very much for that. Last question, then we can go for a quick fire round question. In the property investment world, businesses, social media, or society, I see first world problem of overwhelm. So many social media channels, everything get thrown at you. See people driving big cars, expensive cars, they share their lavish style that they live online, buy so many houses left, right, and center. How do you deal with overwhelms? Because you manage so many things, right? How can people get rid of overwhelm and stay focused in what they're doing?
Okay, so there's 2 parts to that question. The first part is me. How do I deal with overwhelm and manage the things I'm doing? But then the second part is people. How do people get overwhelmed? Now, the reality to the answer to this question is it depends where these people are at, the people where, you know, we're helping in terms of answering this question. But what I'll do is I'll answer in 3 snapshots. I'll answer for myself, you know, when I was 11 years old and kind of knew nothing about property. I'll answer for myself when I was kind of 19, you know, working my first full-time job as an estate agent. And then I'll answer again kind of as myself right now in terms of where we're at in our property portfolio. And hopefully that will give people some good vantage points to understand where they fit in any of those, if they fit in any of those, and what they're going to do. So if I take you all the way back, Rahim, when I was 11 years old, you know, saw my mum go through the redundancy, realized I couldn't help her. Now, most human beings, if they're going to be honest with themselves, they will realize they are helpless. When we start any journey, we're helpless. Human beings, when we're born into this world, we are born helpless. Okay? Here's the interesting thing. When we're born into this world, we can't even hold our heads up ourselves. Okay, why is that? Because helplessness is the original initial state of everything. If you want to talk about information, what is helplessness in information is called foolishness or ignorance. So if I want to get into property, I need to be smart enough to understand I always start in a place of ignorance. Now, I need to elevate from ignorance into knowledge. Then the moment I start to know something, I need to elevate into understanding. And the moment I understand something, I then need to elevate into wisdom. Okay? Now, how do I know this? Again, I don't know this because I'm some genius. I know this because I read the Bible and this stuff's in the Bible. It's the framework for how we transition any area of our life. So like parenting, for example, when you start being a parent, you are ignorant. You have no idea how to be a parent. Then you transition into knowledge. Oh, I have a kind of idea of how to be a parent. Then you transition into understanding. Oh, I understand why I tell my child to do this, why we feed our child this amount of times in a day, etc. And then you shift into wisdom, where you're wise, which is the application of the things you know. You're actually doing something. Now, here's the biggest problem for most people. When I was 11, I had the same problem most people had. I was ignorant, but here's the challenge. I didn't know I was ignorant. You see, as one coach used to tell me in 2015, 2016, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. Now, that's where most people start. That's where all of us start in every new endeavor. But the problem is, as long as we stay in I don't know what I don't know, we can't grow. Yeah. So what I encourage people to do is get clear on what you want to do, because the clearer you get on what you want to do, the faster you'll know what you don't know. And the moment you know what you don't know, you can then transition. So this is what I call the 3 levels of insight. Okay. The first level of insight is when you don't know that you don't know. The second level of insight is when you know what you don't know. So you've got to a space where you say to yourself, you know what, I want to get into property investment, but I don't know much about property investment. So the moment you now know what you don't know, what happens? You can learn and grow. You can start to seek so you can find, according to Matthew 7:7, which I said earlier. You can start to go on a journey to start to acquire the information that you're not aware of through means of coaching, through means of teaching, through means of experience, through means of training, through means of watching other people, etc., etc. You see, it always surprises me when people jump on like what I call the University of YouTube and think they're going to learn how to do property on the University of YouTube. And the reason why it surprises me is because it makes me realize that most people don't understand that after ignorance and knowledge, the scenario doesn't end. But the reason most people think that is because that's what we're taught in school. We're taught in school that the purpose of learning is just to know. So people watch YouTube videos on how I'm becoming more successful, how you're becoming more successful, how people are becoming more successful, but they don't get ever more successful. And I always think to myself, the people commenting should be producing better results because they have access to this information. But then I have to remind myself, no, it doesn't work like that, because after their ignorance and the knowledge has to come understanding and wisdom. Wisdom is the application of the knowledge. You have to do the stuff. So the reason most people are overwhelmed is first and foremost because they're not clear, as we spoke about earlier. So like me at 11 years old, I wasn't clear. I didn't know what I wanted to do or how I wanted to do it. But then just the moment after you get clear, you have to admit that you do not know and then go on the journey to know. So that's me as an 11-year-old. Now, fast forward to me as a 19-year-old. I'm working in an estate agency. I'm meeting people with portfolios. I'm learning how to do the traditional buy-to-let thing. I think someone with 4 properties has a major portfolio. Okay, so that's me at 19. Now, here's the interesting thing about me at 19. I'm now in a space where I know that I don't know. Because at 19, I'm looking at these investors and I'm saying they've got property and I don't. There's something they know I don't. So what happens? I have to go on a journey of knowledge. I had to start reading, studying creative property investment. The majority of the coaches I had when I was 19 were based in Australia or America. Why? Because there was hardly anyone in the UK all of those years ago teaching how to invest in property using little or none of your own money. So I started studying that at the age of 19 years old, working as an estate agent, starting to understand how can I get into property if I don't have money of my own. Right. Fast forward, we've built our portfolio. Now, if I answer the question from where I'm at right now, I'm in a completely different space. I'm not in the space as it pertains to property where I don't know that I don't know. I'm not in the space where I know what I don't know. I'm now in a space where I know what I know. And here's the beautiful thing about knowing what you know. The faster you get to know what you do know, the faster you get to understand how much you don't know. Absolutely. So I get to start that whole cycle again, like I did at 11 years old, But the difference now is I have the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to understand that the fastest path for me to succeed and start to know the things that I don't know is to acquire coaches, to acquire trainers, to acquire leaders, to acquire key collaborative partners, strategic partners, to start to acquire a team, an organism, an ecosystem of people that can help me develop faster and help me to get into rooms that I couldn't get into on my own, help me to add value to people I couldn't add value to on my own, help me to learn things that I couldn't learn on my own. So this is the cycle, the sequence.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. So I really relate to that. So people are watching property investment videos as an entertainment now. You're absolutely right. If you're commenting on those videos, as I said, you're leaving lots of breadcrumbs in those videos. Why not go and implement or actually invest in yourself? Because the whole thing you just talked about there, basically, to bring it into into 2 words is basically invest in yourself. Right? Once you invest in yourself, the doors open, you make difference of people. Like your example, you used to go to £20 event. You used to make £20 networking people. When you invested £20,000, you then meet people who are investing £20,000 of projects. So I like that analogy. Exactly the same thing. If you watch people on YouTube, you've seen people, read them, follow them. If they relate to you, if you can connect with those people by any way, connect with those people, learn what they've done, it expedites your process as well. I remember one of my coach one day told me, I went to one of his events. He had about over 1,000 people in his event, right? Before the event, he told me, Rahim, believe you me or not, out of these 1,000 people, right, maybe only 10% would take action that day. Out of that 10%, maybe only 2% would proceed to take action. And out of that 2%, maybe only 0.5% would actually be successful. I looked at him and said, wow, out of this 1,000 people, are you telling me that all these 1,000 people are just coming here for an entertainment, basically? He said, well, that's how it would look like. And then it happens exactly the way he said it, right? He said to me, look at it, 1,000 people we've got today. Let's look at the end of the event. How many people actually took action to go into the advanced courses or took action to go into the mentorship program, right? We looked at it, less than 10% took action, right? Saying they will register, right? Left their card details, etc., etc. A week later, chased those people, oh, I'm not interested anymore. We had about 2%. Out of that 2% also, only 1% went to the training. And then out of that 1%, maybe only 0.5% actually execute what they've learned. So you're absolutely right. If you want tomorrow to be better than today, basically you have to take action. That's what you're saying there. You have to take action to take you from where you are to where you want to go. I remember this quote. I can't remember who it was from. He said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing every single day, expecting a different result.
Einstein,
right? So basically, it's like that. Like what you just said. If you're on a £47,000, your wife was at £29,000. Just thinking, okay, if we live this way, we will continue to be having the same result. But then you thought outside of the box. Say, listen, we deserve better. You know, I want to be the best father for my children. Then you thought outside of the box and say, you know what? We need to actually jump out of this rat race and determine our own future. This is what I tell I tell most of my students. I borrow this word from Grant Cardone. He said, your financial success is your duty, responsibility, and obligation. That's right. You don't leave that to anybody else, right? That would be your focus. But again, I'm learning from you as well. Basically, I'm actually taking notes. I don't know if you're observing me taking notes, because what you're saying is really, really impactful, and I'm learning a lot as well. So, quick fire round questions. Let's keep them short and precise.
Let's go.
Let's go for it. Ready?
Let's go.
Okay. What was your worst advice you remember receiving?
Your network is your net worth.
Right, okay. Best advice you remember receiving?
Don't procrastinate today what you can do today. Don't leave today. I don't know how it was said, but it was
don't leave what you need to do today for tomorrow.
Yes, basically. Don't leave till tomorrow what you can do for yourself today. That was it.
Fantastic. Who is your favorite sports star? If you've got
That's a great question. I've got too many. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Venus Williams, Serena Williams, Tiger Woods. You know, there are so many sports stars that I respect and revere, and for so many reasons. When I was growing up, I was not interested in sport. I was always interested in the coaches. So I used to study Sir Alex Ferguson. And the reason why is because I used to ask myself, how can one human being have such an impact that 11 other human beings create such great results? So yeah, I've always been interested in the coaches and the managers. But yeah, there's a lot of sports people that I've got a lot of respect for.
I like that answer. Looking back at your 18-year self, what would you have done differently?
Oh, wow. I would have found my wife earlier. I would have married her earlier. That's one thing I definitely would have done earlier. And I would have hired my first coach way sooner. Like, you see, one thing people don't realize, Rahim, is wealth has a need for speed. And it's something a lot of my coaches I work with now teach. So if I was 18 years old again, I would be creating a lot more wealth, a lot more faster.
Wow, thank you. What was your inspiration growing up?
Great question. My largest inspiration, I would say, was my dad. You know, my dad and my mom, they decided to get divorced when I was 6 years old. My dad didn't leave. I had a lot of friends growing up in school. They didn't know who their dads were. They didn't know where their dads were from. Growing up in East London in the UK, that was quite common. But, you know, I've always been close with my dad. My dad's been one of my greatest inspirations. And then outside of my dad, my three brothers. I've got three brothers. And that's a kind of powerful environment to grow in. Like, as a man, to grow around other young men and a real man, I think it's a very powerful tool to have as a person. So yeah, I would say my dad and my brothers.
Your biggest regret?
My biggest regret is, again, you know, I would say it's not creating wealth faster. That has to be my biggest regret, because the faster you create wealth, the longer you get to live with it. And most people don't realize that, you know, there may be a family member that may pass away. There may be a family member who ends up getting ill or sick. You know, throughout 2020, 2021, everybody knows what happened. And the reality is, you know, some people weren't comfortable throughout that period because they hadn't created wealth before that period. I'm very fortunate that in 2017, my wife and I, we were working from home from there, homeschooling our children from there. You know, lockdown came and really didn't have an effect on us, besides the fact that we couldn't take the children horse riding. So the reality for me is, I would say, you know, my biggest regret is not becoming wealthier faster. And I'd encourage other people to do the same thing. Become as wealthy as you can, as fast as you can, so you can live with it longer, achieving your actual real life's purpose, which is what's the real main focus and thing.
Fantastic. I like that. Is there something you believe that lots of people disagree with you?
Yes, there's lots of stuff I believe that lots of people disagree with me. One of the things that I believe that a lot of people disagree with me about is that it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. You know, and I know lots of people disagree with that, because lots of people still choose to make a little bit of money over a long period of time rather than a lot of money in a little bit of time. So the evidence, whether they say they disagree with me or not, the evidence shows that lots of people disagree with me on that. And another thing which is similar, very well connected, a lot of people disagree with me on something that I teach a lot of the time, which is your time is way more valuable than your money. And again, it's another thing which lots of people will tell me, no, Samuel, I agree with you. But if they really agreed with me, they wouldn't sell lots of their time
watching
for
Netflix.
very little money.
Or probably watching Netflix. Absolutely right. What is the best book you've ever read or listened to?
That's a great question, and the answer, hands down, with no equivocations, is going to be the Bible. It astonishes me why more people don't read the Bible. And I'm not talking about this from a religious perspective. I'm not a religious person. I'm just talking about this from an information, leadership, business, wisdom and wealth perspective. Like, the Bible is full of nuggets, which I think I can probably be as bold as to say 100% of the content that we read today. And this goes back to your question earlier about overwhelm. The overwhelming majority of content that you engage with today comes from the Bible originally. And the problem is most people just don't give the Bible the credit. I'm one of those people who believes you're supposed to give honor where honor's due. So in order for me to not deceive anyone, I'll just tell people this is where I get 90% of my information from, if not all of my information. But if you read a good relationship book, if you read a good novel, if you read a good self-help book, it doesn't matter what the title of the book is, how jazzy or snazzy they make it sound. The reality is 99%, if not all of the information actually comes, or all of the valuable information anyway, actually comes from the Bible, and the stuff that doesn't is from the person's personal story. So I discovered that at 18, 19 years old, and as a result, I've been reading the Bible ever since. And yes, there's very few things that I hear from people that I'm not like, oh, that's in the Bible, which was a book written hundreds of years, thousands of years before that person even existed. So yeah, the Bible, hands down.
Fantastic. Does money change you?
Does money change you? Well, let me answer let me shift your question a little bit to answer it accurately. Money can change you. Does money have the power to change you? The answer to that is no. Does money change you? The answer to that is it depends. So what do I mean by it depends? Well, it depends on whether you know who you are or not. Most people don't know who they are, and because they don't know who they are, when they get money, they look like they've changed, but they haven't changed. All they've done is magnified who they were already. This is why I will always encourage people to know who you are before you do anything significant in your life. And getting clear, again, going back to what I spoke about earlier, is one of the foundational principles about knowing who you are. So, for example, you see a lot of people who get married without first knowing who they are, and as a result, what they try to do is to be two halves that come together to make a whole. The problem with that is if you're not whole in and of yourself, you don't add value to the person you marry. You end up trying to take value from the person you marry. And we have a whole world, because of our school system and a whole bunch of other faulty things we have in our world, which teach people that that's okay. I learned at the age of 19 that that's not okay. I need to be fully whole and complete, so when I connect with someone else who's fully whole and complete, we can add value to one another, and that's how we have exponential value rather than detracting value. So does money change you? I believe it has the potential to, if you have no idea who you are, but I don't think it changes you if you know exactly who you are before you have money.
Fantastic. Does money make you happy?
Does money make you happy? Money doesn't make you happy because money is a tool. Okay, that's like asking, can a spanner make you happy? Okay, so although money in and of itself cannot make you happy, or does not make you happy, doesn't make me happy anyway, you know, money can be used in order to fulfill things that you desire in order for you to be happy. Okay, so for me, for example, there are things I've wanted to do since 11 years old, which I wasn't able to do until I became a cash flow creator. And the reality is now, as a cash flow creator, there are things I do that I've never even wanted to do because I believe that my wife will get, you know, happiness from it. Like, we just recently celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary, marriage
Congratulations,
anniversary.
by the way.
Thank you. And, you know, in light of that, you know, how would we be able to celebrate without money? Like, here's an interesting thing, just going back to what I mentioned about the Bible. The Bible has this powerful verse. It says, money answereth all things. Now, most people don't know that's in the Bible because they're so focused on hearing the hearsay about, oh, you know, money is the root to all evil, which the Bible doesn't actually say. But the interesting thing is, when you understand that money answereth all things, you start to understand when you wake up in the morning, you can answer the question of, can you have breakfast, and what kind of breakfast you can have based on whether you have money or not. If you don't have money, you can't answer that question. So the reality is, money answereth all things. So can money make you happy, or does money make you happy? My answer to that is, it doesn't make me happy. You need to be happy before you engage with the money, because money is a tool. And the same way you can use a tool like a spanner, like a wrench, like any other tool in order to do something that will derive you satisfaction, is the same way you can use money to do something that can help derive you satisfaction as well.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, brother. Is
welcome.
there something you used to strongly believe you recently changed your mind on?
Yes. The most intelligent people in the world are the most educated people in the world formally. And that word formally is the key. You know, I would never have studied 4 degrees if I felt I didn't need them to succeed. But I did study 4 degrees. And the reason I studied 4 degrees is because I was hoodwinked, which means deceived. For those of you who don't know, I was deceived from a very young age into thinking that a piece of paper that you hang on your wall, a few letters that you put before your name, etc., or after your name, depending on what level you're at, determine your success. And it's overwhelmingly obvious that it doesn't. You know, you mentioned Bill Gates earlier on, who was a college dropout. You know, in the UK, we have Alan Sugar, again, didn't finish school. We have people like Richard Branson, didn't finish formal education in the way that we say it, or higher education. We have people like Elon Musk. You know, the list goes on of some of the wealthiest people in the world or in the nation who don't have all of those academic accolades. And if you look at it statistically, the overwhelming majority of the wealthiest people in the world are people who don't have those overwhelming academic accolades. So I used to believe that academia was an indication of intelligence. And what I realized is academia is just an indication of academia. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having degrees. Like I said, I've studied 4. But there is something wrong with being deceived into thinking that academia equals intelligence when it doesn't equal intelligence, it equals academia. Just like anything else equals anything else. So for example, I remember hearing Jim Rohn years ago saying that sincerity is not a test of truth. And that's what really helped me at the age of 19, 20, understand, Samuel, just because someone's sincere when they talk about something doesn't mean they're telling you the truth. And it's the same way that just because someone's got an academic accolade doesn't necessarily mean they're very intelligent.
Wow. Thanks for that, bro. So this podcast is called Property Investment Blueprint. What does Property Investment Blueprint means to you?
All right, that's powerful. So for me, I have a number of blueprints that I teach my coaching clients. And it depends on what we're talking about in terms of the aspect of property investment. So where I started my journey was finding great property deals. And there's a four-part formula I call the sourcing blueprint, which I created in 2017, 2018, which I've been helping people with for a number of years on how they can find great property deals. So the blueprint for the sourcing of properties is a 4-part formula, which I call the 4M formula. And literally all that is marketing. You have to be marketing. After that, managing. If you're successfully marketing, people will come to you. And the moment they come to you, you have to manage those relationships. And the moment after you start managing those relationships, opportunities will come to you. And after those opportunities come to you, you have to measure those opportunities to find out where the money can be made in the opportunity. And straight after you measure the opportunity, you then mature the opportunity so it converts from an opportunity to money in your bank, money in your stratosphere. So the reality for me is, if we're talking about finding deals, then it's the sourcing blueprint, which is the property blueprint everybody needs to know, because of the simple fact that without the sourcing blueprint, you have no property opportunity, and without no property opportunity, you have no deal. One of the other blueprints I teach people is my Cashflow creation blueprint, and again, that blueprint is literally how you have an infinitely scalable property portfolio where your family will never lack financially again. And for me, like, the property investment blueprint, what that really means for me in a snapshot is understanding the framework you need in order to succeed. Because what you have to understand is, just like in school where they have a curriculum, in property there's a curriculum, there's a hidden curriculum. Being successful in anything, there's always a hidden curriculum. In the Bible, I think I shared this with you previously, Rahim. In the Bible, there's a verse, it says, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, which means hide something, but it's the honor of kings to search it out, to find something. So what that basically means is, God gets pleasure in being able to hide things in front of us, and we are actually royalty. We become more like royalty the moment we're able to find the things that are hidden right in front of us. So my encouragement to everyone who's listening to this is, be a kind of person who's able to do exactly what I said from Matthew 7:7, to seek so you can find. Most people aren't seeking because we don't get taught in school to seek. We get taught in school to look. So I want to encourage people to start to seek so that they can find, because the moment you start seeking, you automatically start finding, and things can start changing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Final one. If there is only one person you've loved me to interview, who would that be and why?
If there was one person I'd love for you to interview, who would that be and why? It's a crazy answer. I'm gonna have to pick a Bible character, which I don't even know if this is gonna be possible, but I would love for you to interview Jesus and ask him all the questions you've asked me about property. Because the funniest thing is, like, for most people who are religious, they see Jesus as a religious character, and because they see Jesus as a religious character, they have no understanding that they can derive value from him as it pertains to property investment. But again, like I said, all of the stuff I do in property, I predominantly learned it from the pages of the Bible. So I would encourage you, if you get the opportunity or chance, to interview Jesus and ask him a number of questions about property.
I don't think I'll be able to do, but I'll try. So in my dreams, probably. If I was to interview someone in the property industry, world, maybe UK based or things like that, who would you recommend and why?
There's a number of great people that I've had the pleasure of connecting with. There's Ginny Barlow. Simon Zucci was a previous coach of mine, or it's still today a friend of mine. There are so many people. There's a long list of people I could share with you. Andy Haynes, someone who works very closely to Simon Zucci. There are so many people that I've connected with, and they've had a profound influence in terms of nuggets that they've dropped, which I've been able to utilize and monetize as well. So there's so many, but I can definitely send you a few names.
Please, if you could, please, I would really appreciate that, because I know we would learn a lot from those people.
Yeah,
so,
and obviously
just before
having
we
hosted.
start,
What I was going to say, Rahim, is having hosted, one of the largest networking events as well. I've had a lot of people who have spoken on my platform as well, the likes of Rory O'Mara as well. So people who could really add value as well. So yeah.
Right, definitely. So if you could hook me up with those people, I really appreciate that. Just I know you've got a challenge coming up. I'm super excited to learn about that. So could you tell the audience a bit about that challenge? Because you just told me it's about, I don't know if it's a 5 day or 3 day challenge. I'm not sure what it is about really. Could you kindly tell us what that is about?
Awesome. So what we do is we help people to create colossal cash flow through means of our 5-day cash flow creation challenge. So again, like those of you who are interested, you can go to the website cashflowcreationchallenge.com. Very simple, cashflowcreationchallenge.com. And in the cash flow creation challenge, what we do is we teach people over those 5 days the science behind cash flow creation using property as a vehicle. We teach them specifically the strategies that they want to use and strategies that are ideal for them. We teach them the skills that are necessary in order for them to elevate in terms of cash flow creation. We teach them how to have a cash flow creation system, and then we also teach them how to have cash flow creation success. So it's a 5-day challenge. The next challenge is coming soon. Feel free to check the website cashflowcreationchallenge.com so you can find out more about that. It's a paid challenge because those who pay attention, and those who pay more attention, and because of that we have a general participation as well as a VIP participation on that challenge. So those who join us general, they'll get all of the training, all of the insights, all of the bonuses, and those who join us as VIPs, they will get an additional extra 1 hour VIP Q&A every single day of the 5 days. So after the training finishes, we open up a Q&A section where the VIPs can ask any questions about the training, about their own property journey, and we do high-level coaching inside of those VIP Q&As as well.
Fantastic. What an amazing way to end. That was a great special moment for me. Thank you so much, Samuel. I really appreciate you joining the Property Investment Podcast. Where should we follow you, and where are you hanging out in social media if we want to connect with you?
Awesome. Well, I believe I'm on every platform, but the easiest place for people to connect with me is Instagram. I prefer Instagram Messenger these days than Facebook Messenger, but I am Samuel I Can Win. On Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, Samuel I Can Win. You can find me on YouTube, Samuel I Can Win. So Samuel I Can Win wherever you want to go. I'm on LinkedIn as well, Samuel I Can Win Ikhinmwin. So yeah, guys, I'm on social media. I have been for a while. So yeah, happy to connect with people, happy to help people and help them go to the next level in their journey as well.
This has been so amazing. Thank you for sharing your life passion with us. I love you, bro. I love the enthusiasm. I love the energy, and I really appreciate having you in Property Investment Blueprint. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Rahim.
Spending an hour with us.
Thank you for inviting us over.